Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the psychology of receiving and money. We all say we want to earn more, we want to live freely, and have financial independence, right? But what if your nervous system is actually fighting tooth and nail to reject that exact abundance? Today, we're going to explore some incredibly fascinating insights from the perspective of YouTuber Alexa Saranoia, and we're going to figure out exactly why we subconsciously sabotage our own success.
So, let's start with a phrase we hear all the time. Honestly, you've probably said it yourself. I don't need much. We are so deeply conditioned by society to view extreme financial success with this subtle sense of moral discomfort. We kind of wear our lack of material desire like a badge of honor, don't we? We tell ourselves that being content with just a little makes us grounded or noble or just somehow better. But what is actually going on beneath the surface of that simple little sentence?
Well, we almost always mistake that phrase for genuine humility. But in her own deep dive, Alexa realized something pretty profound. Telling the world she didn't need much was actually a defense mechanism. It was a totally subconscious excuse to avoid the pressure, the discomfort, and frankly, the massive responsibility that comes with real growth. Because when you think about it, it's just so much easier to say you don't want something than to admit you're absolutely terrified of actually getting it and having to hold on to it.
And this brings us to a really fascinating concept, the humility ceiling. This is essentially a subconscious financial limit we set for ourselves, and it masquerades beautifully as modesty. It sounds like, oh, I'm fine, I'm perfectly happy with what I have, but in reality, it's a hard concrete barrier that stops a person from accepting or keeping greater wealth. So for the rest of this explainer, we're shifting gears. We're moving away from a moral discussion about greed, and we're diving into a purely intellectual deconstruction of our own psychological roadblocks.
So what does this ceiling actually look like in everyday life? Well, it looks like deflecting a compliment the very second you get it, or instantly bracing for disaster right after you have a really good month at work. Alexa shared this hilarious but honestly super telling story. She deliberately went to the mall with one specific goal: buy some nice face cream for herself, just to practice prioritizing her own needs. But her brain just completely short-circuited. She reflexively walked out of there with gloves for her daughter, cologne for her husband, and she entirely forgot her own cream. I mean, how relatable is that?
But here's the crucial thing you need to understand. This isn't just a mindset issue. You can't just positive affirmation your way out of this. We are talking about the somatics of receiving. It is a literal physical nervous system problem. When you're operating under a humility ceiling, your biology physically interprets the unfamiliarity of wealth, or even just personal gain, as fundamentally unsafe. Your body is hardwired to seek out the familiar. So if being broke or just getting by is your familiar baseline, sudden wealth is literally interpreted by your brain as a threat to your survival.
To rewire this, Alexa turned to a framework from her mentor, Lanka Lutanska. The framework has 3 steps. Step 1 is incredibly easy for most of us. Give. We're fantastic at helping others, right? Our families, our clients. Step 2 is grow. We usually don't mind investing in a course or our business because that feels productive, it feels worthy. But step 3, gain. Receiving strictly for yourself, just because you want to, that is exactly where our nervous systems completely freeze up. We simply do not know how to gain without feeling massive guilt.
To really expose this hidden block, Lanka gave Alexa a fascinating challenge. At the time, Alexa had exactly $14,000 in her bank account. So Lanka told her, mentally spend every single cent of that strictly on yourself. Not on the kids, not reinvested in the business, just you. Alexa sat there staring at a blank page, completely paralyzed. She genuinely struggled to even imagine what she would spend it on. That's when she realized her capacity to simply desire things for herself was profoundly underdeveloped.
So how do you actually fix that? You train that capacity through a practice called the mental spending loop. It's exactly what it sounds like. You mentally spend the money on things you truly deeply desire. But here's the trick. You don't stop there. You imagine that money instantly replenishing back into your account, and then you repeat the cycle. By running this loop in your imagination over and over, you are safely exposing your nervous system to the continuous flow of wealth. You're slowly eliminating the guilt tied to your desires, literally rehearsing expansion before you ever allow it into your reality.
Now, quick warning. When you finally start prioritizing your own financial abundance, you're going to feel a ton of cognitive dissonance. You'll probably panic. When Alexa finally bought some nice clothes for herself, she instantly freaked out, convinced she was becoming this terrible, materialistic person. But her mentor delivered such a pivotal realization. She told her, fear doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means something old is dissolving. That fear, that's just the death of your old identity. It means you're moving. Those micro shifts are creating a massive impact. And that friction is what creates a really profound identity gap. To put that into perspective, let's look at Alexa's situation. Her business reality had actually grown to generate 20 grand a month, but her nervous system's default identity was still totally tethered to her old lower salary of 4 grand a month, because that 4 grand, that felt safe. It was predictable. The 20 grand felt unstable and completely unfamiliar. So she spent her days subconsciously preparing for her new reality to just collapse. If you earn a high income but still identify with a lower one, your nervous system will constantly self-sabotage just to return you to that comfortable, familiar baseline.
So, how do we bridge this gap? First, you have to spend with trust, not fear. A tight grip resists the flow of money. Second, practice receiving without constantly anticipating the other's shoe dropping. You gotta stop telling yourself this won't last. Third, borrow identity through proximity. Surround yourself with people for whom your absolute dream income is just, a normal Tuesday. And finally, practice the identity of who you are becoming today. Ask yourself every morning, how does the version of me who makes this much money carry themselves, even during a slow week?
Let's challenge a massive piece of cognitive dissonance right now. Think about it. We have absolutely zero shame investing in our health, right? Buying fitness courses or seeking out the very best organic food for our family's well-being, we actively celebrate that. So why on earth do we equate wanting financial resources with greed? If we can invest in our physical health completely guilt-free, we absolutely must start viewing money as a neutral tool, not some sort of moral failing. We have to learn to pursue financial stability without feeling like we're doing something inherently bad or greedy.
Because, and this is really the absolute core of the whole thing, money is just a multiplier. It's literally just a tool. It's like a hammer. If you're a good person, money simply empowers you to serve your family better. It provides the actual resources for you to engage in charity and meaningful mission work. It allows you to hire a team and support their livelihoods. It acts as an energetic multiplier of whatever your core values already are. Having more money just means you can do exponentially more good in the world. It is simply energy that needs a place to flow.
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this completely changes how you view your own humility ceiling. I want to leave you with a final, provocative audit of your own internal capacity for abundance. Think about this honestly. If your income doubled tomorrow, would your nervous system actually know where to put it? Or would you panic, self-sabotage, and subconsciously find a way to get rid of it? Remember, real growth cannot happen if there is nowhere for it to land. Expand your capacity to receive first, and just watch the rest follow.
Imagine you go to the mall on a Saturday afternoon with one singular, highly specific mission.
Okay, a person on a mission.
Right. You are going to buy a nice, luxurious face cream for yourself. You've set the money aside. You drove 20 minutes out of your way specifically for this one item.
You're completely prepared.
Exactly. You walk through the doors, you have the capital, you have the intention, and yet 2 hours later, you walk out to the parking lot carrying, winter gloves for your daughter, a new bottle of cologne for your husband, and absolutely no face cream.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You completely forgot to buy the one thing you went there for. Why does that happen?
Well, it sounds like just a simple lapse in memory, right? Like you just got distracted. But when you really look under the hood, it is actually a profound biological reaction.
A biological reaction to buying face cream?
Yeah. The brain literally overrides the conscious intention because it registers the act of spending on oneself as a threat.
That is just wild to me. And that is exactly the perfect entry point for today's deep dive into our source material.
It really is the core of it all.
Right. So we are examining the worldview, the lived experiences, and honestly, the intense psychological journey of entrepreneur and YouTuber Alexa Serenoja.
And we should clarify right up front, we're ignoring all the standard business advice today.
Oh, totally. If you are tuning in looking for algorithm hacks or marketing funnels, this isn't the session for that. We are pulling back the curtain to look at one incredibly fascinating, often really uncomfortable theme.
The psychology of receiving.
Yes, the psychology of receiving and money, and how we have to actively force our nervous systems to expand their capacity to hold abundance.
Because the overarching premise here, which I think is so crucial, is that most people believe their lack of success is a strategy problem.
Right, I just need a better marketing plan.
Exactly. We assume if we just push harder or learn one more trick or, optimize our morning routine, the breakthrough will happen. But the sources we are looking at today suggest something radically different.
Which is that the bottleneck isn't your strategy at all, it's your physiology.
Spot on. It's physiological.
I want to frame this for you, the listener, with a specific analogy. Think of your capacity for wealth or success or honestly even happiness, like a computer's core operating system.
Oh, that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, because you can go out and download all the latest, most expensive apps, meaning, you can buy the best business courses, hire the best consultants, learn all those new productivity frameworks.
Right, you're upgrading the software.
Exactly. But if you are trying to run those high-powered apps on an operating system that is stuck in survival mode, like a system built purely for scarcity, the hardware is going to reject the software.
Just going to keep crashing.
It crashes every time.
And that hardware analogy is so crucial because we're talking about the actual physical nervous system. I mean, your nervous system's primary biological directive is not to make you happy.
No, definitely not.
And it certainly isn't to make you wealthy, Its only job is to keep you alive. And to the nervous system, safety equals predictability.
Predictability. So whatever's familiar.
Right. It vastly prefers a familiar struggle over an unfamiliar success.
So let's say your familiar baseline is making, I don't know, $4,000 a month and constantly stressing about bills. Your nervous system catalogs that state as safe because it knows exactly how to survive it.
Precisely. It knows the rules of that game.
Yeah.
But if you suddenly start making, say, $20,000 a month, your conscious brain is absolutely thrilled.
Right, you're popping champagne.
Exactly. But the primitive part of your brain, the amygdala, flags this sudden change as a massive anomaly, and unpredictability is dangerous.
So it literally panics.
It panics. It triggers a subconscious stress response to get you back down to that familiar baseline.
Which brings us right into Lexa's actual lived experience with this.
Right.
Let's dig into the transcripts because her story is so relatable. She hit this brutal plateau. She was making between $2,000 and $5,000 a month, and she was just completely stuck there.
And she was doing the work. She was doing everything the gurus tell you to do.
Yeah, she was posting consistently, giving endless value, working late into the night. But the income was just flatlined.
It wouldn't budge.
Right. And the revelation she had wasn't that she needed to tweak her SEO. It was that she was trapped inside an identity.
The sources refer to this specific identity trap as the humility ceiling.
The humility ceiling. I love that.
It's so descriptive. For years, Alexa built her entire self-image around the concept that she simply didn't need much.
She didn't need much. And she had the receipts to prove it, right?
Oh, absolutely. She drove a 20-year-old car that barely even started in the winter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she famously talked about wearing the same underwear for 10 years.
Wait, really? 10 years?
10 years. And, when her kids outgrew their clothes, she immediately bought them new ones,
Yeah.
of course. But for herself, she would just patch things up and make do.
I was reading that part of the transcript,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt this immediate sense of recognition. Because she wore this as a badge of honor. And I think a lot of us do.
We absolutely do. It's so common.
We take pride in being low maintenance. There is this strange, almost quiet arrogance in being the person who says, oh, I'm easy. I don't care about material things.
Right, like you're somehow above it all.
Exactly. But Lexa realized this wasn't actually humility at all.
No, not even close. It was a highly sophisticated defense mechanism.
How so?
Well, if you analyze the psychology of claiming I don't need much, you really have to look at what that statement protects you from. Because if you don't need much, you never have to ask for anything.
And if you never ask for anything, you never face the possibility of being told no.
Exactly. You completely insulate yourself from rejection.
You can't fail if you don't want anything.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than just the fear of rejection. You also insulate yourself from responsibility.
That makes a lot of sense.
Think about it. Massive growth, significant wealth, or deep influence. These things require you to be highly visible.
Yeah, you can't hide anymore.
Right. They require you to manage resources, to make really hard decisions, to be subjected to public criticism.
Which is terrifying for the nervous system.
Terrifying. So by declaring that you are perfectly content in the background, making just enough to get by, you construct this very safe, very comfortable ceiling that quietly caps what you allow into your life.
Okay, I have to push back here just a little bit on behalf of anyone listening who might be feeling, a bit defensive right now.
Fair enough. Let's hear it.
My brain immediately wants to say, wait a minute, isn't being non-materialistic a fundamentally good thing? I mean, we are bombarded with messaging from philosophy to religion to modern minimalism that wanting money is inherently shallow.
Right. That it's greedy.
Exactly, and that true enlightenment is being completely content with what you have. So isn't she just being virtuous?
That is a completely fair challenge, and it's actually a conflict Alexa had to wrestle with really heavily herself.
I imagine so.
But the distinction lies in the underlying emotional state. Genuine contentment feels peaceful, it feels expansive and free, but the humility ceiling we're talking about doesn't feel peaceful. It feels tight. It feels like restriction. It's essentially fear-based avoidance wearing the mask of moral superiority.
Wow. Fear-based avoidance wearing the mask of moral superiority. So is the difference between like truly not wanting a bigger house because you genuinely love your small home
Right.
versus not wanting a bigger house because you are secretly terrified of the mortgage, the maintenance, and what your family might think of you for buying it?
Yes, exactly. And from an energetic standpoint, which is something Alexa explores really deeply in her work money requires a destination.
The destination.
Yeah. If you want to view wealth creation as a flow of energy, it has to have somewhere to land.
It makes me think of having a massive reservoir of water available to you, but you only put out like a tiny thimble to catch the rain.
That's a great image.
And then you walk around patting yourself on the back, calling yourself incredibly humble for not wanting to be a burden on the rain clouds.
Right. I'm so virtuous for just using a thimble.
Yeah, when in reality you have this huge internal capacity, but you are artificially choking off the supply because you are terrified of what would happen if the reservoir actually filled up.
The physics of that analogy are just spot on because water stagnates if it doesn't flow, right? And money operates very similarly in these psychological frameworks.
It needs movement.
Yes. If you constantly broadcast to the world, to your business, and to your own subconscious that you don't need much, you are effectively hanging a no vacancy sign on your life.
A no vacancy sign.
Yeah, new wealth approaches, sees that there is no space created for it, no permission granted for it to enter, and the income just flatlines.
So she realizes that she is the bottleneck. She's the one holding up the no vacancy sign. But how do you actually tear that sign down?
That's the hard part.
Because you can't just look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm ready to receive now. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to logical commands like that.
It certainly doesn't, and that is exactly why Alexa began working with a mentor named Lanka Lutanska.
Right, Lanka.
Yeah, Lanka introduced a diagnostic framework to help Alexa actually see this subconscious blockage playing out in real time. It's called the Give, Grow, Gain framework.
I really want to spend some time here because this diagnostic is something you, the listener, can literally apply to your own life the second this deep dive is over.
It's super practical.
So how does this categorization work?
Lanka asked Alexa to look at where her energy, her time, and her money went every single month, and to sort it into 3 buckets.
Okay.
The first bucket is give.
Which, for Alexa, was essentially her entire life.
Right.
I mean, she's a mother of 3. She's giving to her kids constantly. She's giving to her husband.
Exactly.
And in her business, she was continuously giving away free value on YouTube, giving extra time to her coaching clients. Her default operational state was just pure output.
And we really have to acknowledge how heavily society rewards this.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly for women and mothers, but really for anyone in a service role. The endless giver is canonized. So that bucket for her was overflowing.
It was completely filled.
Right. Then the second bucket was grow.
This one is tricky, though, because at first glance, grow sounds a lot like receiving.
It does, but it's fundamentally different. For Alexa, grow meant buying business books, paying for professional mentors, attending seminars.
Right.
She had no problem spending money or energy here.
I totally relate to this. Because buying a course or a nonfiction book feels completely safe.
Why is that?
Because it's cloaked in productivity. You can justify it to yourself and to the world. You say, I'm not indulging, I'm investing in my future. This is going to make me a better worker, a better earner. It's still deeply tied to the ethic of hard work.
Exactly. It has a utilitarian justification. You're acquiring something, yes, but only so you can eventually produce more output.
Right, it's just fuel for the machine.
Yes. But then Lanka introduced the third bucket, gain.
The ultimate test.
It really was.
Yeah.
Lanka told Alexa to write down what she wanted to gain. Not what she needed for her business, not what would make her a better mother or a more efficient worker.
Just purely for herself.
Yes. What did she want to receive purely for the joy of receiving?
And the result was just a blank page.
Completely blank.
The transcript details how she literally sat there staring at the paper, and her mind went completely empty. Her brain kept looping back to, but I'm fine, I don't really need anything.
which reveals a massive, massive imbalance in the nervous system.
How so?
Well, think of it like muscles. The giving muscle is hypertrophied. It's like a bodybuilder's bicep. It can lift immense weight.
Right, it's super strong.
And the growing muscle is well-conditioned. But the gaining muscle, the actual capacity to simply receive without having to justify it through utility or service to others, is completely atrophied.
At a zero tone.
Zero.
Which brings us back to the story I opened with, the mall experiment.
Yes, the mall.
Because once Alexa realized this gaining muscle was atrophied, she didn't just, journal about it. She decided to go to the physiological gym.
She took action.
She went to the mall with the explicit instruction to herself to buy a face cream purely for her own pleasure.
And we see exactly how powerful the subconscious programming is here. She has the money, she has the intention, but the moment she's in the environment, the nervous system just takes over.
I really want to understand the mechanics of this. Because how does a person just forget their primary objective like that? She ended up buying gloves for her daughter and cologne for her husband. Does the brain just experience like temporary amnesia?
It's not amnesia at all, it's threat avoidance.
Threat avoidance.
Yeah. When she walked into the mall and initiated the sequence of buying something purely for herself, her brain's default mode network, the part that maintains her self-identity as the self-sacrificing giver, recognized a major conflict.
Oh, because buying the cream violates the identity.
Exactly. Purchasing for pleasure violates the identity of the person who doesn't need much. This cognitive dissonance triggers the amygdala.
So her body literally starts producing stress hormones, like cortisol, adrenaline.
Yes. The sympathetic nervous system ramps up. To the conscious mind, she's just looking at face cream. But biologically, she is experiencing agitation, discomfort, and a low-grade fight-or-flight response.
Over a face cream.
Over a face cream. And the fastest way for the brain to resolve that stress and return to a state of safety is to revert to a known, safe behavior pattern.
Which is giving to others. That is just incredible. The brain essentially hijacks her body, walks her over to the men's fragrance counter, has her buy cologne for her husband, and then floods her with dopamine because she is back in her safe identity.
Exactly. The stress is resolved, the threat is neutralized, and the face cream is entirely forgotten.
The implications of this are staggering when you scale it up to business or career success.
Oh, they're huge.
I mean, if your nervous system cannot tolerate the micro act of spending $50 on a face cream without triggering a stress response, how is it possibly going to tolerate the macro act of receiving a massive influx of new clients?
Or signing a huge contract.
Right. Or making $50,000 in a month.
It can't. The body would view that level of receiving as a 5-alarm fire.
A total crisis.
Yeah, so it will unconsciously orchestrate scenarios to make sure you never get the big contract, or you sabotage the client relationship just to keep you safe from the stress of receiving.
Which means we are faced with a very mechanical problem. How do you actually build capacity in a nervous system that is terrified of expansion?
Right. And Alexa's mentor at Lanka had a very specific, almost brutal exercise for this.
I want to dive deep into this.
Yeah.
Because when I first read it, my immediate reaction was, oh, this is just the secret. This is toxic positivity and manifestation nonsense.
It sounds a bit woo-woo at first glance.
It really does. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized it's actually grounded in cognitive behavioral therapy principles.
It is essentially exposure therapy for your financial baseline.
It's exposure therapy. I like that.
The exercise is called mental spending. Lanka told Alexa to look at her bank account. At that specific time, she had about $14,000 in savings. And Lanka gave her a simple instruction. I want you to mentally spend every single dollar of that $14,000 on yourself.
On herself. Not on bills, not on paying down a mortgage, not on groceries for the kids, purely on her own desires.
Pure desire.
And the friction this caused was immediate and intense.
Alexa described it as agonizing. She couldn't even fathom what to buy. The mental blocks were so severe that she had to force her imagination to work.
It was like lifting a heavy weight for the first time.
Exactly. Eventually, she visualized putting it toward a cabin on the water and maybe a new car, since hers was 20 years old.
Even then, notice how she immediately defaulted to a car, which is arguably a practical utility, a transportation need, rather than a pure frivolous desire.
That's a great point.
It just shows how deep the restriction goes. But the exercise didn't stop when she spent the $14,000, did it?
No, that was just the warm-up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, once she finally, painfully managed to mentally allocate that money, Lanka changed the rules.
What did she say?
She said, okay, Imagine that the second you spent that $14,000, another $14,000 immediately appeared in your account. Now, I need you to mentally spend that.
My brain would break.
It's a lot.
I actually tried this exercise while prepping for this deep dive. I spent the first chunk on paying off a loan, which I realized violates the rule of spending on desire, of course.
Right, that's the utilitarian.
But then when I had to imagine a second chunk arriving, I felt genuine fatigue. Like, it is cognitively exhausting to try and imagine deploying resources you aren't used to having.
It is. And Lanka pushed her even further. She said, and when you spend that second chunk, a third chunk of $14,000 appears. Spend it again and again and again.
It highlights the exact boundary of her capacity.
Exactly.
She was hitting a wall of imagination. And the logic here is unshakable. If you cannot even imagine spending the money, if your brain literally cannot compute the logistics of having it and deploying it, your nervous system cannot hold it in reality.
You are stretching the neural pathways. You have to emotionally rehearse the expansion.
Emotional rehearsal.
Yes. By repeatedly imagining the influx of resources, you are slowly desensitizing the amygdala to the shock of wealth. You are making the feeling of having boring, familiar, and most importantly, safe.
It's capacity planning. Let's look at what happens in the real world when you don't do this emotional rehearsal. Because Alexa experienced this firsthand when her business actually did start to take off.
Right, she hit a breakthrough.
Yeah, she started hitting $20,000 months. But because her internal capacity hadn't caught up to her external reality, she experienced what the sources call the bracing for collapse mentality.
This is a classic symptom of financial homeostasis. Alexa describes how notifications for new sales would ping on her phone one after another.
Which would be amazing.
A normal reaction would be celebration. But instead of celebrating, she actively ignored them.
She ignored them.
She would look at the numbers and tell herself, this is a fluke. This is probably going to be my worst month yet. The will is about to run dry.
Why on earth would someone making $20,000 a month convince themselves they are failing? It makes no logical sense.
Because she was emotionally expecting contraction to match her old identity.
Right.
Her previous salary at a corporate job was $4,000 a month.
Okay, so that was the baseline.
Yeah, it was the set point where her body felt safe. So when $20,000 came in, it didn't register as success. It registered as a highly dangerous anomaly that the universe was about to violently correct.
It is exactly like a thermostat in a house.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
If your internal financial thermostat is hardwired and bolted to the wall at $4,000, the moment the room heats up to $20,000, your internal air conditioning system kicks on.
It has to cool the room down.
Right. Your nervous system floods you with anxiety, you ignore the incoming money, you maybe pick a fight with a business partner, or you just stop marketing yourself.
You self-sabotage.
You do whatever it takes to cool the room back down to that familiar, comfortable 4,000 degrees.
The contradiction is profound. You cannot stabilize a higher level of income, or a higher level of joy for that matter, while you are physically and emotionally bracing for a collapse.
You're fighting yourself.
You have to consciously override the thermostat. When the new revenue comes in, instead of ignoring it, you have to track it, look at it, and repeatedly signal to your body, this is real, this is happening, and we are not in danger.
So we've talked about expanding the imagination through mental spending and overriding the nervous system's thermostat. But the sources suggest that to truly hold on to abundance, you have to completely alter your fundamental view of money.
Yes, the perspective has to shift.
You have to change it from a static mathematical concept into a dynamic relationship.
The material shifts here into treating money almost as an entity, like as a relationship with a partner.
I'll admit, when I first read this part of the transcript, I thought it was getting a little eccentric.
It definitely sounds a bit out there.
It does. But the psychological mechanism underneath it is actually brilliant. Lanka gave Alexa another assignment. She had to sit down and write a literal love letter to her money.
She was instructed to write an apology to money.
An apology?
Yeah, she had to apologize for not trusting, for hoarding it out of fear, for ignoring it when it arrived, like when she ignored those sales notifications on her phone.
Right.
And she had to apologize for constantly believing that it was going to abandon her.
She had to promise to be a better partner, to let it flow, to trust that it actually desired to be in her life. Let's unpack the psychology of personification here. Why does treating money like a romantic partner actually change our financial behavior?
Think about how most of us are taught to handle money from childhood. We are taught to grip it as tightly as humanly possible.
Because there's never enough.
Exactly. Our relationship with money is usually born out of scarcity and trauma. We believe it is fleeting, hard to get, and that we must protect it at all costs.
Okay, so if we map that behavior onto a human relationship, let's say you have a romantic partner and you are constantly terrified they are going to leave you. What do?
You suffocate them.
Yeah.
You question their every move. You hold on way too tight. You operate from a place of desperate attachment.
And what happens to the partner? They feel trapped. The desperate energy kills the intimacy, it creates immense distrust, and usually it drives the person away.
You create the exact abandonment you were afraid of.
Exactly. When you grip money with that same desperate, fear-based energy, you create psychological friction. In this framework, spending money cannot be an act of loss. It has to be an act of trust and alignment.
It has to flow.
Right. When you invest in your business or buy healthy food or hire a coach, you have to do it with the underlying belief that this is a safe exchange, that the energy you are putting out will return to you.
I really want you, the listener, to evaluate your own physical reactions to spending.
Oh, this is great exercise.
Think about it. How many times have you swiped your credit card for something that is meant to improve your life? A gym membership, a family vacation, a course to learn a new skill, and the moment the transaction goes through, you feel this awful, heavy pit in your stomach.
You just feel sick.
You are internally contracting. You are bracing for the loss, worrying about the shrinking balance in the checking account.
And what does that do? It's like driving a sports car with the parking brake pulled all the way up.
Exactly.
You are pressing the gas pedal by working hard and making investments. But your emotional attachment to the money is violently pulling you backward. You aren't even fully open to receiving the benefits of the gym membership or the vacation because you are so busy grieving the money you spent to get it.
Writing a letter to money forces you to confront that specific friction. By personifying the resource, you bypass the analytical brain that just sees spreadsheets, and you tap into the emotional brain that dictates your actual behavior.
You make it emotional.
Right. Once you articulate your subconscious fears like, I'm afraid you'll leave me, I'm afraid there isn't enough of you, you can consciously choose to establish a dynamic of mutual respect and flow rather than hoarding and anxiety.
Okay, let's play this out. Let's say a listener does all of this work. They expand their nervous system's capacity, they reprogram the $4,000 thermostat, they write the love letter, and fix their internal relationship with money.
They're ready to go.
They're fully aligned and ready to receive. But they are still going to crash headfirst into a massive external roadblock.
Societal guilt.
Bingo. The cultural programming around wealth.
That's inescapable.
Because fixing your internal mechanics is one thing, but how do you overcome the overwhelming cultural messaging that wanting more money makes you a bad, greedy, or morally compromised person?
It's everywhere.
That programming is ingrained in us from fairy tales to news media. The villains are always rich, right?
It is incredibly deeply rooted. And Alexa hit this wall very hard. She started working with a business mentor named Harut, and she experienced a severe crisis of conscience.
Tell us about that. She had done the internal work and decided to set a massive goal. She publicly announced to her community that her goal was to make $1 million.
Which is huge.
It is. Initially, she felt expansive. She felt proud of her ambition. But that very night, her subconscious rebelled against the cultural taboo.
She had nightmare after nightmare. She dreamt that people from her life were surrounding her, calling her greedy.
Just tearing her down.
Yeah, they were telling her she was fake, that she had lost her way, and that all she cared about was money. The guilt induced by these dreams was so intense that the next morning she almost retracted the entire goal.
She almost gave up.
She was ready to shrink back down just to make the imaginary critics comfortable.
This is where Harut, her mentor, stepped in with what I think is the most clarifying analogy in all of the source material. It completely reframes the moral weight of wealth.
It changes everything.
He told her, money is completely neutral. It is just a tool. It is exactly like a hammer.
I want to linger on this hammer analogy because it is profound in its simplicity.
Go for it.
Think about a hammer sitting on a workbench. It possesses no inherent morality. It is neither good nor evil. Now, you can pick up that hammer and use it to build a beautiful, sturdy house to shelter a family.
A noble act.
Exactly. Or you can pick up that exact same hammer, walk down the street, and use it to smash the windows of a hospital.
The hammer doesn't care.
The hammer does not care. It simply amplifies the intent, the character, and the inner world of the person holding it.
Precisely. If a corrupt, selfish person acquires a lot of money, they will use it to exploit others and build monuments to their own ego.
Right.
But if a fundamentally good, heart-centered, generous person acquires a lot of money, they will simply use it to amplify their goodness.
Harut really pushed Alexa on this. He asked her, why do you actually want to make money? It's not just to buy shiny things for the ego. The reality of living in this world is that impact requires capital.
Impact requires capital.
He pointed out some very harsh, undeniable realities. You cannot help your extended family out of debt without money. You cannot give substantial, life-changing amounts to charity without money.
He used some visceral examples that hit hard if you're a parent too.
Yeah.
You cannot buy the safest possible vehicle, the one with the highest crash test ratings to protect your kids, without money. You cannot consistently buy the highest quality organic food to keep your family healthy without money.
It's just the reality of the world.
And as an entrepreneur, you cannot provide bonuses or health care or stability to your team members without money.
These are real, tangible impacts that dictate the quality of life for the people you care about, and they require the hammer. They require capital.
Exactly.
The profound shift in perspective here is realizing that when you cap your earning potential out of some misplaced sense of humility or fear of judgment, you are actively limiting your ability to affect positive change in the world.
Harut asked a question that I think completely shatters the illusion of the noble poor. He essentially asked, does staying poor actually help anyone?
Oh.
Does you struggling to pay your bills make the world a better, kinder place?
It's a brutal question, but a necessary one. Harut pointed out a recurring pattern. The people who spend their time on the internet hating on creators who are making money, the ones leaving venomous comments calling people greedy.
We all know the type.
Right. They're very often the ones who aren't doing anything to actively help others in their own lives. They are projecting their own limitations and insecurities.
But if a good person, someone who cares about their community and operates with integrity, makes $1 billion, they're likely going to do $1 billion worth of good.
They'll build schools, fund research, employ thousands of people.
Yes. If that good person shrinks down and stays small because they had a nightmare about people judging them, the world loses out on that massive positive impact.
So when you look at it through this lens, the guilt surrounding wealth is revealed as a false construct.
Is this just a story we're told?
It is a cultural narrative designed to keep people manageable and playing small. When you finally view money simply as a neutral multiplier of your existing character, the guilt evaporates. The ambition is no longer about feeding the ego. It becomes a profound responsibility.
Okay, so we've stripped away the guilt. We see money as a neutral tool, a hammer, to build a better world. But there is still a massive gap between understanding this logically and actually embodying it.
It's the application part.
You still have to become the person who can hold that hammer every single day without dropping it or getting exhausted.
This brings us to the final phase of Alexa's journey, which is entirely about action. How do we practically, in our daily lives, normalize this abundance?
Right, what are the steps?
How do we shift our identity so that the nervous system doesn't freak out when the success arrives?
The sources outline several daily strategies for identity shifting. And one of the most powerful concepts mentioned is borrowing identity through proximity.
We touched on this earlier regarding how her peers reacted to her goals, but the mechanics of proximity are vital.
Let's get into it.
When Alexa told regular people in her everyday life about her million-dollar goal, their reaction was negative. They called her greedy. They projected their own financial traumas and limitations onto her.
But when she told her mentor, Harut, about the $1 million goal, his response was completely different.
He didn't gasp. He didn't call her greedy. He just said, okay, let's do it. What's the strategy?
Because to him, $1 million wasn't an astronomical, impossible figure. It was just math.
Just math. And this is where neuroscience comes into play. The human nervous system is deeply social. We have mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons, right?
We learn what is safe by watching the reactions of the tribe around us. If everyone in your immediate environment thinks making $5,000 a month is a miracle and making $10,000 is impossible, your nervous system will map to that reality.
If you try to push past it, your body feels like you are wandering away from the safety of the campfire into the dark woods. You have to deliberately place yourself in rooms or communities or masterminds where the people consider a $10,000 or $20,000 month to be the absolute floor, not the ceiling.
When you enter an environment where your ultimate goal is considered just a normal Tuesday baseline, your nervous system can finally relax. It looks around, sees that nobody's panicking, and it recalibrates.
It updates the software.
It accepts this new level as a safe reality rather than an anomaly.
But changing your peer group is a big macro step. The sources also provide some really specific, actionable micro steps for practicing this capacity expansion in everyday life.
The first one is incredibly simple, yet incredibly difficult for chronic overgivers. Practice receiving without earning it.
How does that actually look in practice?
It starts with the smallest interactions. When someone gives you a compliment on your work or your appearance, what is your default reaction?
Oh, I deflect. I'm terrible at this.
Most people immediately deflect it. They say, oh, this old thing, or they point out a flaw to balance out the praise. Practicing receiving means you simply look at them, smile, and say, thank you, full stop. You do not deflect.
It also applies to help. If someone offers to carry a heavy box for you or offers to pick up the tab for coffee, you let them.
Let them do it.
You don't explain why you don't really need the help. You don't apologize profusely for being a burden. You just practice the micro-muscle of receiving without providing justification.
Another crucial step she emphasizes is this. Let behavior lead belief. You do not have to feel ready to act like the next version of yourself.
This sounds dangerously close to fake it till you make it, which I think a lot of people, myself included, find a bit inauthentic.
It can feel that way.
If my nervous system is screaming at me that I don't deserve the $20,000 a month, pretending that I'm completely fine just feels like I'm lying to myself. Doesn't that just create more internal conflict?
That is a vital distinction to make. It is not faking, it is practicing.
Practicing?
Faking it implies deception. It implies you are trying to trick others into believing you are something you are not. Practicing implies skill building. You are acknowledging that you don't have the capacity yet, but you're deliberately building the skill of holding a new identity.
So practically, when you are faced with a choice, maybe you want to say no to a speaking opportunity because you are terrified, or you want to talk yourself out of hiring an assistant because it feels too expensive, or you want to put off resting because you feel guilty, you pause,
You take a breath.
you ask yourself, what would the next version of me do? The version of me that already runs $1 million business?
And then you execute that action even while the current version of you is terrified. Because here's the biological truth. Neuroplasticity responds to action. Identity repetition builds familiarity.
Repetition is key.
When you repeatedly take the actions of a successful person, it builds familiarity in the brain. Familiarity builds safety in the nervous system. And that safety is what eventually stabilizes your new baseline.
You can't wait for it.
No, you cannot wait for the feeling of safety to arrive before you act. You have to generate the safety through the action itself.
And there is one final overarching principle in these sources. Stop making desire mean something is wrong with you.
We touched on this when discussing the guilt surrounding wealth. We are heavily conditioned to interpret the desire for more as a character flaw.
Especially if you already have a lot.
Right. If you have a good life but you still want more, society tells you that you are ungrateful or greedy or never satisfied.
But Alexa proposes that desire is simply information. It's a compass.
Exactly. It is pointing you toward the next iteration of your potential. If the desire for a bigger business, a nicer home, or a wider impact exists within you, it is not a mistake that needs to be suppressed with forced humility.
It's not a flaw.
It is a biological and energetic direction to be explored. By honoring the desire without attaching shame to it, you remove the internal resistance, allowing the expansion to happen naturally rather than fighting yourself every step of the way.
This has been such an incredible, multi-layered journey through the internal mechanics of success. Let's recap exactly what we've unpacked today, because it is a lot to process.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started with the confronting realization that the phrase, "I don't need much," is rarely about true contentment. It is very often a defense mechanism, a humility ceiling that protects us from the responsibility, visibility, and vulnerability of massive growth.
From there, we explored the biological reality of homeostasis. The fact that our nervous system will actively sabotage unfamiliar wealth because unpredictability registers as a physical threat.
Thermostat.
Yes. This highlighted the necessity of exercises like Lanka's mental spending, forcing ourselves to emotionally reverse the possession of wealth to stretch our capacity before reality can even catch up.
We looked at the profound shift required in rewriting our emotional relationship with money, transitioning from a state of avoidant, fear-based hoarding to a secure attachment where we treat money with trust rather than suffocating it.
Stop pulling the parking brake.
Exactly. And finally, we dismantled the societal guilt by embracing Harut's analogy. Money is a neutral hammer, a tool that simply amplifies our intent to build a better world, a better life for our families, and a wider impact in our communities.
The entire thesis of these sources boils down to upgrading that internal operating system. Because if you do not actively expand the hardware of your nervous system, it will never be able to run the software of the abundance you are working so tirelessly to create.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you step back into your day. I want you to think about an area in your life right now where you are proudly declaring to yourself or to others, "I'm fine, I don't need much."
Look closely at that area and ask yourself honestly, are you actually, deeply, peacefully content?
Or are you just using that phrase as a shield to hide from the responsibility, the visibility, and the necessary discomfort that would inevitably come if you finally allowed yourself to grow?
It's a tough question, but a necessary one.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Remember, every next level of your life, your business, and your impact begins with learning how to receive. We'll see you next time.